It's sudden again. Why Filipino nurses dread the second wave? Indispensable to New York City hospitals, healthcare workers from the Philippines died in shocking numbers last spring. Will things be different this time? And this is January the 15th. This article was published, New York Times. Belinda Ellis had been a nurse for 40 years, and she thought she had seen it all. She had worked in hospitals in the Philippines, where she was born and got her degree. She was a nurse in Saudi Arabia, then at the military hospital on the border of Iraq when Saddam Hussein came into power. Wow, that was a long time ago. Let's see here. But when the first wave of the pandemic battered New York City last spring, she still wasn't prepared. Nor could she have foreseen the immense toll the coronavirus would take on her Filipino colleagues. As devastating as COVID-19 was in those early months, a number of studies now reveal just how hard the virus hit Filipino healthcare workers. Of all the nurses who died from the virus nationwide, one study found close to a third of them, wow, were Filipino. According to an analysis by ProPublica, in the New York City area alone, at least 30 Filipino healthcare workers had died from the virus by June. Many of them fell sick, including Erwin Lambrento, a tenacious night shift nurse from the outskirts of Manila, who died of the virus in early May. Pictures of him still hang around Amherst Hospital, where Miss Ellis works. His presence is still all over, she said. If I think about it, I'll get emotional. It's still very fresh. According to a survey published in September by National Nurses United, the largest nurses union in the United States, 67 Filipino nurses have died of COVID-19. That figure, which was pulled from public obituaries, is around a third of the total registered nurses who have died nationwide, though Filipinos make up only 4% of those nurses overall. It's really heartbreaking, says Denai Cortez, president of National Nurses United and a nurse from the Philippines herself. Ms. Cortez fears that the true toll is worse. The numbers we are producing are all underreported. I'm sure of that. Now, another wave of the virus has arrived. The infection rate in New York City has risen in recent weeks, and hospitalizations are at alarming levels. More than 450 New Yorkers have died of COVID since the beginning of 2021, and this article was published on January 15th, and we're talking about 450 people already died. And that's in like 14, 15 days. And many Filipino nurses fear their hospitals could again be crushed under caseloads that recall the harrowing months of March and April. Yeah, I remember those months. Filipino nurses have a long history of working in New York City hospitals, dating at least to the immigration reforms in the 1960s, which broadened the categories of foreign workers who could apply for a United States visa. In the Philippines, nursing schools have taught an American curriculum since as early as 1907, granting degrees to English-speaking nurses who could slot easily into American hospitals. They quickly became invaluable in the 1980s as a solution to staffing shortages exacerbated by the AIDS epidemic. It was in 1986 that Miss Ellis was recruited by Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan, where she was quickly deployed to the bedsides of patients with HIV. San Francisco and New York were especially welcoming to migrant nurses, according to Leo Felix Jurado, a professor of nursing at William Patterson University in New Jersey, who wrote his dissertation on the importation of Filipino nurses into American hospitals. Mr. Jurado, who is now 55, was recruited in 1988 by JFK Medical Center in Edison, New Jersey. He recalls that visiting the employment fairs held in Manila hotels felt like an afternoon of bar hopping. Recruiters jostled to make hires, sweetening work visas to the United States, with signing bonuses and promises of free housing. Can you imagine that? Free housing in New York. Mr. Jurado said, it was very alluring to come as a result of that, he added. Over time, Filipino American nurses wove themselves into the fabric of New York City hospitals. They took jobs in acute bedside care in hospitals battered by AIDS, and they found housing in Amherst and Woodside in Queens, an area now known as Little Manila. Yeah, where the Jollibee is. Jollibee and Johnny Cargo and LBC. These neighborhoods were slammed last year by the pandemic. In June, a community group painted a mural in Woodside to fallen Filipino workers. It reads Mabuhay, which in Tagalog means may you live, or welcome, or greetings. At least that's what they say in the airplane when you get in Philippine Airlines, Mabuhay. The mural honors Lemuel Sison, a medical technician at Long Island University Hospital. Let's see, what's calling here? No, I don't know that name. And it honors Romero Akhtarab, a former nurse coordinator at New York Presbyterian Hospital who left retirement to care for patients with COVID-19. Mr. Akhtarab, who was 63, arrived in New York City in 1984. At work, he was known for a deft ability, DFT, meaning like clever, ability to place an IV. You have to be good because not everybody can place an IV, you know, you're looking for that vein. And for his easygoing nature, which earned him many friends throughout decades in the profession. Wow, he all had all that going for him, and COVID took him away. It also earned him his first date with Joy Constantino, a cardiac nurse who arrived from the Philippines in 1985, when he let slip to friends that he was interested in her. The two were married in 1988. In 2019, Mr. Akhtarab stepped down from his managerial role to work part-time, intended to soon retire completely. Mr. Akhtarab had not even told his wife that he'd been seeing COVID patients. Wow. He didn't think I would allow it. She probably wouldn't. The two were hospitalized with the virus in early April, but only Ms. Akhtarab responded to treatment. Mr. Akhtarab's condition steadily worsened and he died of the virus on April 24th. There's a picture of them there, Joy and Romeo Akhtarab. Both Filipino nurses were hospitalized with COVID-19 in April. Wow. Like Romeo and Joy Aclara, Filipinos are overrepresented in types of healthcare professions that require close contact with patients, and that's how you get it, close contact, such as in emergency rooms or nursing homes, a risk heightened by Filipinos' high rates of hypertension, asthma, obesity, and diabetes. Right? So those are the factors that can lead to those deadly rates with COVID. Yeah, those are the factors right there. Obesity, hypertension, diabetes, the so-called comorbidities. Everything has been pointed to the risk for Filipino healthcare workers, said Inez Ponce, a researcher at UCLA Fielding School of Public Health, who studies health disparities. In the spring, many Filipino nurses went weeks without sleeping at home, said Lani Florencio, a board member of the Philippine Nurses Association of New York. Ms. Florencio has been running mental health Zoom calls for the group's members. There's a picture of her here. Our hospitals look like battlegrounds, Ms. Florencio said. We were hearing stories about how depressed the nurses feel, about how they were crying at work. That emotional toll for healthcare providers is tough. We are supposed to be healers. Belinda Ellis, who is now 65, is still shaken by the memory of Amherst Hospital in March and April. At that time, she was assigned to the hospital's newly designated COVID-19 unit. And she said, I've worked in Iraq at the height of a war, recalled Miss Ellis, whose first posting as a travel nurse took her to a military hospital on the border of the Kurdistan region in 1979. A long time ago. There is some hope among the nurses that the winter surge won't be as deadly as the wave that arrived in the spring. Many say their hospitals are better prepared this time. They know and when to use ventilators, for example. And Ms. Ellis pointed out that Amherst now sits on vastly replenished stocks of protective masks and gowns. In addition, healthcare workers have priority in receiving the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, which have been shown to be highly effective. Ms. Ellis just received her second shot on Tuesday, but it will be weeks before New York City hospital workers are fully immunized. In the meantime, nurses in several hospitals here have warned about a lack of protective gear, and hospitals throughout the city are reviving some of the coronavirus units that became a necessity in the spring. Over the holidays, Ms. Alice's COVID Unit 19 unit became so full that it once again had to transfer patients to other hospitals. And recently, a 45-year-old woman had to be intubated, a procedure that hadn't been done on a patient so young since the spring. It's starting again, Ms. Ellis said. Definitely. So let me see here. Let me open up the comments and see what some people say here in the comments. This person named Haley said from New Jersey said, "Follow the money. Thank the insurance companies that have destroyed our medical system. Pay the nurses and doctors good wages so they can all do what they want to do, help heal us." Well, I'm not sure if we can pin this on the insurance company, but there is a disparity though. Certain groups of people are affected more. Filipino nurses seem to be dying a higher number than others, you know, and we have to look into that. This person says when this pandemic is over, there should be a Filipino nurse or doctor in every medical TV show or film. The Hollywood industry owes it to them, the very least. Well, that ain't gonna happen, right? That's not gonna happen. Hollywood has its own set of artists as who's who. I mean, remember not that long ago, with the was it the Oscars, where they came on and say Oscars so white. I mean, you had all these black people in different films, and they couldn't win anything. They couldn't get Oscars, and they said Hollywood Oscars so white, you know. And then after a while, they kind of like got the message and so forth. Look, this is America. It's going to be hard to change. You know what I mean? We just see Donald Trump been kicked out the door, and he doesn't even want to leave office. You know, being that we talking about Philippines, he wants to pull like Ferdinand Marcos did in the Philippines when Marcos decided that due to communist rebels and due to high crime, that he alone can fix the problem, and he decided he's gonna remain in office. So he pulled a coup, became a dictator. We now had the same thing here in America. Who would have thought? In the Philippines is having, but then in America you see people went in and trashed the Capitol building. Went in there, used toilets, didn't even flush the toilets, all this kind of stuff. They want to hang the vice president. They want to hang the vice president, who was like one of the most loyal persons to low-life Donald Trump. I mean, really. Say what you want about Mike Pence, whether you agree with him or don't agree with his politics, but the man had been very loyal to Donald Trump, and yet these people want to hang him. and this is what it comes down to, that for some people, it doesn't matter. You can never love them enough. For somebody who's a narcissist, you can never do enough. You can never love enough. It's like this: how deep is your love? It can never be deep. One wants to do things that are totally illegal. Like, yeah, have the vice president go in there, a ceremonial duty really, where the states present the count from the electoral college. That's a formality. You know, it's a it's a formality in the Constitution. The vice president doesn't have the power to change anything, but Donald Trump actually wanted him to go in and change it and say, you know what, these numbers are not correct. We're going to send them back to the state and make Donald Trump the winner and send them back to us, and then we're going to count it and declare him the winner. That's not the way it works. It's like the Queen in England, when she opens Parliament. It doesn't matter who's the government. In England, you have like the Labour Party, the Conservative, and who's ever in power, she says my government. That's the way she said. My government. If the government has to be labor, it's my government. If the government has to be conservative, it's my government. It's just a formality when she opens parliament. And that's how it is when the vice president, who, according to the Constitution, becomes like the head of the Senate, or the president of the Senate, and takes over and formalizes the vote and says this is the count. That's a formality. It has nothing to do. There's no power in there to say he has the power. And Donald Trump and his delusional people actually believe that you can go in there and you can change. And some of these people actually believe. And what gets me is there's a lady. Apparently, she's a well-off lady because maybe she's rich. She's involved in real estate. She flew up on a private airplane. I mean, how many of us can fly in private airplane? From Texas to Washington. So she didn't even have to deal with TSA. When you fly in a private airplane, you don't have to bother with TSA. Even if they try to put her on a no-fly list, she could fly in a private airplane. So you would think somebody who is well off enough, smart enough, working real estate, able to afford a private airplane, right? You would think people like that should be smart, right? Don't you? You wouldn't expect somebody like that to be that dumb to be following along like part of a cult, like with the Jim Jones. I think Jim Jones was back in was it 79? Yeah, I think it was 1979. He took those people from California and he went to Guyana in the jungles of Guyana, and then he had them drink this what they call drink the Kool-Aid. That's where they got that term from. And so many people died on there. The American military had to go and pick up bodies and fly them back from Guyana. So this is about as close as you can get to Guyana. But Jim Jones didn't have that many people. Trump does. Trump has a lot of people believing that the election was stolen without any proof. It's very, very hard to steal an election in the United States, on a ground level. I mean, yeah, you can go in there and vote somebody's dead mother or something like that. That happens. But that's not systemic fraud. Systemic has to be like organized to be able to pull that off. Where like you have a whole bunch of people, thousands and thousands of people, set up a system to defraud the system. That ain't happening in this country. Yeah, you have regular people who go in there and do things that are not legal, and they usually find them out anyway. But what Trump is talking about is not going to happen here. And I just think it's kind of delusional that people who should be educated, people should know better, people should have money, like that woman, and now she realized, oh my God, she's arrested. Yeah, you're not even wearing a mask. You inside the Capitol where you don't belong, except you invited in. I was there when I was in high school as part of a trip, high school trip. I went to the Capitol, you know, but we were invited in. That's the difference. We were on a school trip and we were invited in, but these people were not invited in. You're supposed to go through like a metal detector to get into that building, you know. And the stuff that they pull in there is so egregious that they were able to pull this off. I kind of go off on a tangent here and this stuff reading these comments here, but the point is that if you have that kind of money and you have that kind of clout, how could you how could you be carried away like that? Where you become like, a cult person in a Jim Jones type situation, kind of like the guy in that nursery that story. Well, not it wasn't really a nursery. The one with the Pied Piper, where he blew the flute and kids followed him and they went in the mountain, opened up, and then they disappeared. Yeah, but the Pied Piper was different. The Pied Piper, if I remember well, he got rid of their rats. They had too many rats in town, and with the music, he was able to get rid of the rats. The rats followed him, and then the people didn't want to pay him, so he took their kids, and the kids followed him. They went into the mountain. Mountain closed up. So the Pied Piper wasn't crazy. The Pied Piper did a service. He was not paid. He got pissed off, and I guess in the old days there were no court to go to. So he went into the mountain. Everybody's kids were gone. So Donald Trump is the modern day Pied Piper. Okay, so this person, David from Phoenix, Arizona, said, "Nurse here, Filipino nurses are simply the best. Intelligent, hardworking, kind, and almost uniformly proud U.S. citizens." And somebody responded and said, "I second and triple that thought. They're compassionate, intelligent, kind, the best. So much also is the culture. They honor their family and elderly. 4 out of 5 of the nurses who we have are Filipino. Most important quality that they care and take pride in doing their job." Well, I worked with some Filipino nurses, and I gotta say that I had one when I was in nursing school. One of the professors was Filipino, and I don't know how she used to do it, but she would come in during the day, teach and so forth, give the lectures, and we even had where we had to go into like the hospital at a certain time and so forth. And yet go to work. She was working like the four to midnight shift or so forth. That was amazing. And then there were other people too who were able to do it. And one thing I remember is that many of them had stress because, like, coming here to the U.S., family, and this is a good time to talk about it. People don't realize how difficult work is in America. In the Philippines, if you work as a nurse in the Philippines, a lot of stuff they do here, they don't have to do there, like cleaning the patient. Family usually do all that stuff. Family come in, take care of the patient, and so forth. So their work is totally different from here. Whereas here, you have to be hands-on. You have to have nurses aid. You have to have all this stuff. You can have a family member sitting in the room there and say, "Oh, my mother hasn't been cleaned up in the last 2 hours. Can you bring somebody in?" Now, we know that, if your family member or so forth and your mother hasn't been cleaned up in the last 2 hours, there's nothing wrong. You can always go take Claude and help clean up your mother. you know? But this in America, that's how it is. But in the Philippines, no. You, the family member, expected to do the cleaning and so forth. So the point is, here there's a lot of stress, and then you have family members asking for things. So many of these people are very stressed out. They got to buy things to send back to the Philippines, like books and so forth, and help this one go to school. It's not easy. It's not really that easy. And then you have to put up with your your life. I remember somebody telling me a lady, I think one of the nurses, I think in Canada, she was so frustrated. She posted something on her Facebook. Her brother in the Philippines is asking her to buy him a car. You know, and he has no idea, or maybe he doesn't really give a damn. You know how life is in other parts of the world. How hard she has to work, and I think she went on to say, Canada is cold, mostly cold, especially if you live in some of the western part, like around, like if you let's say Alberta, or those states, what is it, Saskatchewan or what have you, the ones like above, like North Dakota. And North Dakota is a very cold state. If you go from North Dakota up into that part of Canada, like Calgary and all those things, wow, freezing cold. So she has to pay. She has to pay for heating bills and all these different things, bills to pay. And this guy in the Philippines want her to buy him a car, you know, just because he's her brother, just like that. She must buy him a car. So she really got pissed off, and she made the post. But that's how some Filipinos are, when they get pissed off, they use like Facebook, and they just go off like Notes from the Underground, Dostoevsky's, like the underground, that man who just talks to himself and talks and talks and talks. So they get pissed off. So instead of yelling out a window and accusing people, they just go on Facebook and they post a whole bunch of personal stuff. Because I read some of the stuff some people showed me, and like one lady who was a roommate next to my friend, and she ended up with some Chinese guy, got pregnant for him, and so forth. And she wrote a whole bunch of stuff about, how she tried to be nice to him, and she said, if you really want to see the monster in me, I'm going to show you the monster in me. And she's like kind of going off on the Chinese guy by posting all that stuff. So you gotta say, this is kind of crazy, right? Why are you posting your personal business about some man you're living with on Facebook? You're not really you're not really like getting a message to a particular person. You're not really getting to him because he ain't gonna be reading, this Chinese guy from China ain't gonna be reading Facebook, you know. But it's like you're just letting it go, you know. You're just letting it go. You're just expressing yourself. This is the guy. No matter what I do, you aren't going to be happy with me. You think I'm a bad person? I'm going to show you what a monster I can be, and I'm going to show you what the devil I can be, or what have you. That's basically what she was saying. So this is the kind of thing you have going on, when people are stressed out. They go there and they make these posts, and they put something different, a lot of different comments. Okay, so these are some of the comments here. See, you can read this. This person is complaining about the U.S. poaching nurses from countries like the Philippines. Well, you know what? a lot of the Filipino nurses who got the opportunity to come here, and I met some of them, were very happy. I mean, it's one thing, yeah, because the money is small as a nurse in the Philippines, and the money they can make sometimes in one day, you know, depending on your skills. You could probably make that same money in a month in the Philippines in one day if you have like a critical care nurse or what have you and stuff like that, and you maybe work like a 12-hour shift. You work like a good shift, bringing some good money for that day. And in that one day shift, you can make more money than you make as a nurse in the Philippines in a whole month. So it's easy to sit there and say, well, the United States goes and gets these people, what have you. But you know what? At the end of the day, it comes down to money because the government in the Philippines had prevented some of their nurses from leaving to go abroad. When the Philippines has so many nurses, some of them not even working as nurses. And some of them already had contracts signed. Some of them were paid for. They had their tickets. And at the time, the government wouldn't let them leave. Imagine that. You might have just gone home on a little vacation or something and run home for some emergency. And then COVID hits. And then the government wouldn't let you out, which is crazy. And the Philippines is not like here in America. If if I'm leaving America and I'm going out, and I was out in Mexico like last month, yeah, they check when you go through Homeland Security, what have you, as a formality. They check. Now, if they have to have damn good reason to prevent you from leaving the country, like maybe a warrant for your arrest, or maybe they didn't pay child support. You shouldn't have that passport, something like that. But in the Philippines, immigration has been known to hold up people trying to leave to go to work, especially if you're a woman in a certain age group. That happened because I tried to help somebody one time. One of my friends' sister-in-law wanted to go to Thailand, got the ticket, hotel, everything through a travel agent, send it, and they wouldn't let her go. Immigration said she needed like a sponsor from Thailand, somebody in Thailand. They will have to go to the Philippine embassy in Bangkok and have that letter of invitation stamped. She doesn't know anybody in Thailand. I do. So she 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 ended up she couldn't go, even though she had the money and everything, and she had worked in the Middle East. If you work in the Middle East and you bring in money and you sending back remittances, fine, they love you. But if you decide, oh, I want to go on vacation, then you got to give an explanation. Yeah. So it's not an easy country to deal with if you live there. You know, except if you have a lot of money, maybe famous, then yeah, you could travel like you want. But if you're a regular person, you might just have trouble. And she said while she was there were like 18 other people, ladies, who were traveling too. They were going to like countries like Malaysia and so forth. And they couldn't. What they call them? To like, what's that word they use? Where you remove these people from the plane. You know, not the plane. I think it's something else they use. But anyway, She said like 18 other people couldn't go, and some of these people had jobs. But according to the Philippine government, immigration, they more concerned about women going into like you know sex trafficking. That's their concern. So they put that as a high priority. They say that if these women don't have like the particular agreement, employment agreement, things like that, then they can end up in sex trafficking and so forth. So if you believe the Philippine government, that's the excuse. I mean, when you look at the Philippines itself, and you see some of the stuff that goes on there, especially with kids and so forth in the street, and you wonder how can these people even with a straight face say something like that? Do they really care about these women? You know, if a woman is involved in sex trafficking or is trapped in another country, you really care about her? That you want her in the Philippines? Most of the time, some of these women do have work, but it's just that in 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 order to get that kind of work permit, then you have to go through the POEA, Philippines. I think it's like one of these agencies that deal with employment, and you have to show all kinds of different paperwork, and you have to show a contract and so forth. I happen to know a lady. She had worked for someone from Kuwait, who happens to be like he worked for the Kuwaiti government in foreign embassy, and she worked in Moscow. So I guess he used to work at the embassy in Moscow, and she used to work there at his place in Moscow. So she was able to go there fine. However, he was sent to work in Africa, Ghana, and this is where her problem came in. When she tried to leave, she couldn't leave. It was something about I guess he used the same old contract and he had to change the dates and so forth. Didn't do it right. I mean, if you're an ambassador or what have you, English is not even your language. So they wouldn't let her out. They would not let her out of the country. And she's not even from that area. She was trying to go through Manila, and she's from like Cebu area, Mactan, which is down to the south. So it's not like it's not like she's there, friends or family. So luckily, I happen to have I think one of those numbers, Viber numbers or something like that, and I happened to contact her, and she was at the airport. She was at the airport trapped, and so my friend, she asked me to call my friend who could go pick her up, and I think she went pick her up the next day, and she was able to go stay by her, and she stayed there for like a few months because she had to get her paperwork together and so forth. And then the other thing is that the contract he had to sign, he had to like come up with a new contract for her, and then she had to like go to POEA, that agencies that would look at the paperwork and so forth. And then they say, well, he needs to have it certified by the Philippine embassy. However, the country that he's working in Ghana, they have no Philippine embassy. So that presents another problem right there. So what he had to do, they told him, well, you would have to go to one of those other African countries close by and go to Philippine embassy. So he had to go from like Ghana, I think, to like Nigeria, and he had to show up at the Philippine embassy in Nigeria. And it's not like they're saying, well, we'll make an exception here. No, he has to show up in person. So he couldn't even do it like, how you have fax machines and you have things like that. No, they don't want that. You have to show up in person. Go to the Philippine embassy. And I believe that's Abuja. That's the capital of Nigeria now. It used to be the old capital. I think they moved it. You know, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the embassy is moved to Abuja, but at least that's where the government is. The Nigerian government, the seat of their government is. But maybe the embassies are still, you know, in the old capital. I'm not sure. But anyway, the point is that's a big inconvenience. So he had to fly there, get the paper stamp, and then all that takes time to get an appointment to leave the country. So that's not easy, you know. So the Philippines, they make life very very difficult. If you're a poor person trying to earn a living in the Philippines, it's not easy. So this is why this is why you can't blame some of these people when they get the chance. Like that man was saying how it was like bar hopping when they were sweetening the deal like in the 1980s for people to come in and they offer housing and different things like that, for to the nurses. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. And keep in mind too, back in those days, nurses used to come on the H-1B visa, which was really harder because you're working for a certain company, and if somebody doesn't like you or gets mad at you or want to sleep with you, you can have a problem. You could be fired, and it's not like you could just leave and go to another job. Now they change the law, so now if you're a nurse coming in, whether from the Philippines or India, you can come in with you can get a green card. You can sponsor your family, so which is much better for them. So it's much more better now than it was in those days. So these people in the article, like the lady and so forth, they came in when things were really tough in the 98. You didn't have any program like that. You came in the H-1B, you know. And if you came in the H-1B and you wanted to, there was no way you could really stay except you marry like an American citizen or marry somebody else or so forth. You can find a legal means to stay, but you were working in the H-1B visa, like how you see a lot of people from India in the tech, and they try to see if they can stay in America. That's how it was. But now with the nurses, they realize, wow, we really need a lot of nurses. So they changed the law, and they made it that if you're coming in, you can come in with your family and you can get a green card. So once you have the green card, it's very different because you don't have to have any allegiance to any particular, um, let's see, facility, for example. You don't have to be put up with harassment and stuff like that, because the green card allows you the flexibility. You can walk. And there was a case like that. I think the Santosa case. A few Filipino nurses out in Long Island. They were brought over, and they claimed that the work was so excessive, not what was in the contract, and they quit. And then the facility owner, he had one of the local district attorney bring them up on charges to prosecute them, which is very rare. It's very rare that you could prosecute somebody and say, well, they left the patients unattended, and we prosecuted them criminally. That's very, very, very rare and unheard of. So I think it was Santosa was the agency. And that went on for a while. That was in the news. This is like, I don't know, maybe going back over 12, 15 years ago, Santosa. Yeah, probably over 12 years ago, all in Long Island. Eventually, that case was thrown out by the top court. Yeah, it was thrown out because basically in America, you know, labor is something that you can sell as a person. You can say, well, I have skills and you buy my skills and you pay me for my skills. And if I don't like the setup, I leave. You can't really force somebody to work in an environment that they deem is not appropriate to their health. And that's what they were trying to do. And they used the power of the prosecutor to prosecute them criminally, which was really unheard of. You know, I mean, we got doctors who kill people here, and they don't even bring criminal charges against them, much less against nurses for saying, "Hey, you overworking me. I can't sleep well at night. I have too much work. I can't do it." So that's what happened. So the Santosa case was thrown out. Yeah, by the New York court. It ruled against them, against the prosecution. Prosecution doesn't have that power. But they sure made those people's lives miserable for that time. Well, anyway, so these are some of the comments right here. People can read. I'm just gonna go through these. People want to stop video and they can look and read. Lots of comments. Lots of stuff. Okay, let me stop right here.